my main ethos is something I learned from Jay Abraham, which is highest and best use. This must be burned on the inside of my brain by now, but I say this to everyone. Whatever opportunity I'm looking at, I try and think what's the absolute maximum that can be done here and how can I be a part of that.
Welcome to the Get Invested podcast, where we share great conversations with experts from all walks of life to uncover their secret know-how and where they invest their time, their skills and their money, and the benefits that this has created. You see, the truth is that everyone invests. Every minute and every day, we're investing our time, our skills, our energy and our money in something. Some of us are investing consciously, some unconsciously, sometimes for good, sometimes for bad, and sometimes for no impact. Get Invested will help you to start living by design, not by default. I'm going to help you to make it happen, not let it happen. You'll hear the top tips on how you can live with conscious intent so that you can live more, work less, and leave a living legacy by investing now. Listen to the show to discover the top tips on how to get started, make the most of your investment journey, and ultimately to be living your dream, not someone else's. More episodes can be found on iTunes or at bushymartin.com.au/get invested. Thanks for listening, and now let's get invested. Hi, Freedom Fighters. What is your highest and best use? Right here, right now. What is the highest and best use of your time, your energy, and your money? Well, this is a common property term used to assess the development potential of a site. It's also a great question to constantly keep asking yourself throughout the day to make sure you're doing the best possible thing with your valuable time. Is what you are doing right now taking you closer to or further away from where you want to ultimately end up? You may find that once you start questioning yourself on this every time you go to do something, that you reduce the amount of time you spend distracting yourself with useless time-wasting emails, flicking through the internet, and or finger-flicking Facebook. But it's also a question that perfectly frames today's episode. Why? Well, a few weeks ago, we enjoyed an intriguing chat with Kevin Graham about the sizable benefits of building an online Amazon product-based business, commonly known as an FBA, or Fulfilled by Amazon. Kevin's a former South Aussie turned global gypsy who's living the dream doing fantastic things in this space. Here's what many describe as a location-independent digital nomad, which is just techno-babble for travelling the world and sitting on the beach in a hammock, sipping on cocktails with a laptop that you use for a few hours a week to generate the income needed to go anywhere and to do anything. Along with a lot of you, I got pretty excited about this as a potential semi-retirement play for us, and I wanted to know more. Googling the subject, which is always dangerous, I was coming up with incredible headlines like this one: how hundreds of young entrepreneurs are making generational wealth in less than 5 years. Now I was getting seriously excited. To check it out further, Kevin kindly introduced me to today's guest, Coran Woodmass, a specialist fulfillment by Amazon or FBA business broker who helps online founders sell and investors buy these type of businesses. He gets to see the good, the bad and the ugly of FBA online hustles and is perfectly positioned to give independent observations on the merits or otherwise of building or buying online business opportunities. Coran's a former Queenslander who has rapidly followed his nose along his very interesting and rapidly growing journey so far to position himself as an expert e-commerce business advisor. He's also an investor and a globetrotter himself, and he's living and working with his wife in such exotic locations as Prague, Barcelona, Vietnam, Chiang Mai, and New York, just to name a few so far. So, should you look at building or buying an FBA business? If so, are you suited? What do you need? And what does it take to be financially successful in this space? Is an FBA business an alternative option to generate a passive income and to build wealth that will sustain your lifestyle long term? If and when is an FBA business worth considering? And finally, is an FBA-style online business for you? Coran openly, honestly and informatively answers all of your questions on this emerging and intriguing opportunity, and the answers are really going to surprise you. So please, sit back and enjoy this lively and in-depth chat with Coran Woodmass. Welcome back, Freedom Fighters. It's Bushy Martin, and today we've got the real pleasure of spending some time with Coran Woodmass. Now, Coran is a really flow on from the chat I had a few weeks back with Kevin, who's been very active in the Amazon e-commerce space. And if you believe all the hype, there's some pretty exciting opportunities to build, sell, and buy and invest in businesses in that space. But today we're going to find out the reality. So welcome, Coran. We're really looking forward to diving in deep with that with you, mate.
Thanks for having me, Bushy.
Awesome, mate. Now, as a fellow Queenslander, what I'm keen to do initially, for those who don't know you or what you do, can you start by just giving us a quick snapshot on who you are, what you do, and where you're heading, please, mate?
Sure. So right now, I'm the founder and managing partner of the FBA broker. We were the first business brokerage worldwide to start focusing exclusively on selling businesses that have an Amazon sales channel. And yeah, that's what we've been doing for the past couple of years, and it's been going really well.
Fantastic, mate. Now, I want to backtrack to start and then work back to where you are now. And what I'd like to do, if we can, is focus on the period from when you left school. What did you do? But more importantly, why did you do it? And what was the thinking behind each of those steps, so that we've got a bit of a feel for your intention and motivations at that point. So you left school. What was the
Sure.
next step from there, mate?
Oh, wow. Okay. This would take a while. I'll just go the high points.
Yeah, great.
So I hated school. I was never good at learning, remembering, and spitting out information. I've always been trying to carve my own path, and a born entrepreneur. So my first real job was in sales, and a constant theme throughout my career has been selling in some variation. And I think I was attracted to selling because I was looking up to people like Richard Branson and the likes, and thinking, I want to be rich, I want to have my own choices, and I figured that if I could learn to sell, I wouldn't have to constantly be working for someone else and taking orders, because that's just not my personality.
Yep.
So throughout the years, that meant I had more failures than successes, because I didn't really spend much time learning what I needed to do. I just went out and did it. So for better or worse, that's my personality, and that's what I did. So you mentioned before the call window cleaning. So I had a family friend who had his own business doing commercial window cleaning, and it matched well with my sales ability. So he basically taught me his business, and I went out, started drumming up business in my local areas, and up until maybe 10 years ago, I never really had the, 15 probably, I never really had the long-term approach. I was always short-term. So what could I sell today, this week, this month? And I wasn't really concerned about next month, next year. I read a quote somewhere that said, the amount you save is how much you believe in your future, or something. And then I started kind of working towards that. But that's my personality. So I went from selling door to door. The most successful thing I did was sell Foxtel door to door back in the day. That was an amazing opportunity for 18, 19-year-olds like I was at the time.
Yeah.
We were making stupid money and blowing it all by Tuesday, and then having to do it all again. So it was pretty fun. Then I got taken into, I actually was really interested in commercial property. I have an uncle that's done really well in property development and commercial property. So I wanted to figure out that business. Okay. So I started, I was never really interested in residential real estate. I always wanted to go big. So I'd see these huge buildings. Well, what I thought was huge buildings in Brisbane City, they're quite small once you start traveling. I thought, how do these buildings make money? This doesn't make any sense to me. So I was at a sales job, and one of my clients was actually a commercial property manager for a company called Savills, and they were in our building. So I hit him up. I said, "Hey, could I buy you lunch and just talk to you about the industry?" And he actually had a job opening.
Really?
So he hired me, which was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's a baptism of fire. The commercial property management, mate, is having owned and run a property management business. That is absolutely diving into the deep end, no question about it.
Yeah, it was. I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but it matched my personality really well, because I got to drive around, go to all these different places, deal with a lot of different projects, and I found I had quite a knack for project management and dealing with people. So my sales skills kind of helped out a lot there too. Yeah. And I stayed in the property management, facilities management of commercial properties for probably about 7, 8 years. Okay. And then I kind of hit a ceiling of what I wanted to do there. And I started getting more into learning direct response marketing. So again, taking sales skills and trying to develop that online. And,
can we just,
online because.
Sorry, mate. Just backing up there. When you say you hit a ceiling, what do you mean by that?
Well, I kind of knew this earlier, but I quickly realized that no one I was working with was actually owning any of the buildings. We were all just working for these big funds, and it's to get to that ownership level. It just wasn't. Yeah. The path I was taking taught me a lot about property, a lot about budgeting, a lot about financials, and then also project management, of course. Yeah. But then I was at the end of where I could go. I saw the guys that were in this more senior positions, asset management and the like, and I saw all their lives, and I just thought, hell no, I don't want to do that.
So they're people who are busting their boiler with a lot of stress, working really hard, but still don't have probably the income or the capital to invest in property themselves, so they're sort of trapped on the treadmill. Is that a fair description of what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. You have sort of, in Australia, obviously being Australian as well, it's, there's kind of a middle class mindset, I think, without really realizing it. You think because your salary increases that you should be living the good life, and really because of taxes and other things, and just keeping up with the Joneses, you're on a treadmill, like you said. You're not really going anywhere. You can brag about your income increase by X amount, but it doesn't really do anything, and you're the one that loses because you end up working more hours, and that just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, perfect. So and then the old lifestyle inflation kicks in, because the more you earn, the more you spend, and then you don't end up any better off. So what was the trigger then to say, okay, well, this is not working? What were you looking for? Let's delve into where your head was going at that point.
Well, I guess I was trying to figure out how to do my own thing and run my own business. And because I had, actually, there's a side story there that might be interesting with the investing group here. And that was I had another friend so this is a key thing, always mine your network and ask people a lot of questions. That's one thing that has served me really well. I had a good friend who was actually a contractor for me in the property space, and he was just talking to me. I think it was over beers one day. He just said that he mentioned about vending machines and how he's making all this semi-passive cash on snack and drink vending machines. So we did that for about 3 years as well. That's actually what got me into online marketing. I had actually forgotten that step. Yeah. So we got a couple placed at my wife's work. She worked for a massive company, and we got a few of our machines on their levels, and they were doing really well. At the time, we couldn't believe that we were making this much return from filling the machine a couple times a week. So I started looking, because I was working crazy hours, I was on call 24/7, which was one of the reasons I left. It was crazy, but I didn't have the time to go out and find new sites. So I started looking into online marketing to try and drive leads of people that wanted vending machines. So that was actually the first foray into online marketing.
Right. No, yeah, that's good. Excellent. That sort of makes some sense then. So before we sort of jump into that full term, what ended up happening with the vending machines, mate?
So we ended up selling the main client we had, which was where my wife worked. They were relocating, and it was kind of, we could take it or we could not move with them. And they had another vending company that was working, that was trying to get the whole building. Right. So we decided to sell. And because there was no cash flow, we actually sold the vending machines. But what actually happened, which was interesting at the time, the vending machines actually sold for the same amount I bought them for. Brilliant. So that was great, because a second-hand machine that's in good order is still a vending machine. It can still print you money.
Exactly.
And the buyer of those machines also asked me if he could buy the website.
Really?
And at the time, this is funny to say now, but this was a long time ago. I thought, why would you pay for a website?
Love it.
There you go.
They're nice. Well, that's a great little, I guess, microism in terms of running a business, seeing the cash flow, selling the business, and it's probably a bit of a precursor to where you then started heading down in the online world. So let's take us on that journey, mate. So you started doing some research around how you can drive more people to it. Where did that lead you to?
Yeah, so I started consulting on the side. I thought that would be the way to go, work with small businesses and help them figure out how to do the online stuff. What I found out pretty quickly was their budgets were tiny. Yeah. And even if you got a few more people into, say, a hair salon, it doesn't really move the needle on revenue.
Yeah.
So I started thinking, I'm always thinking big. My main ethos is something I learned from J. Abraham, which is highest and best use. This must be burned on the inside of my brain by now, but I say this to everyone. Whatever opportunity I'm looking at, I try and think, what's the absolute maximum that can be done here, and how can I be a part of that? So when I was looking at the marketing world, without a marketing degree, I'll add, I started thinking, okay, I need to go where the money is here. And big companies spend a lot of money on marketing, and a lot of them probably don't have a great deal of knowledge online. Interestingly, my wife has a marketing degree. She's never worked in marketing. And at the time, while she was at uni, I was studying. She always says I've studied more than her, even though I didn't go to university. And at the time, I was learning stuff about online marketing that she wasn't learning. And it's just so far behind. It's better now, but back then it just wasn't. Yeah. So when I started using my sales skills, I just reached out to my network, started looking for any job in marketing with a bigger company. And I managed to work my way into Flight Centre, which is a massive company that at the time they had 14,000 employees, 60 brands worldwide, and it just so happens that the head office is in Brisbane.
Yes.
I didn't know this at the time, but after I was hired, quite awkwardly, one of the national managers asked me what university I went to, and I said, I haven't been to university. He went silent, looked at the boss who hired me, and everyone else at the table went quiet. So that told me that I was either not welcome or quite an odd hire.
Are you serious? I'm staggered.
Yes, and the reason I was the only person, I believe, across Australia at the time without a degree that got into marketing without a degree was because I self-studied so much and had experience in online marketing. I was able to tell them things in the interview that they either didn't know or thought, wow, that's a great idea. I used my project management skills to implement projects faster than the previous guy before me. So all in all, they were pretty happy with me, and this is the best part. I was offered a position there, a different position, and I'd been working tirelessly on the side. My wife was driving a lot of this because I like to spend money. She loves to save money, and we'd had good success saving for our wedding, and we just kind of rolled with that. We bought a house, and we thought we were doing all of that stuff right.
Yeah.
That wasn't very interesting to us, and we started hearing about people that were doing this location independent digital nomad lifestyle. I actually hate that term now, but anyway, that's what got us into it. I was listening to podcasts at my desk, dreaming about being on beaches in Thailand and how I could make money online while I was at this job. Yeah, and while my boss...
Sorry, mate, before we...
Go ahead.
Yeah, just for those that haven't heard that term, location-independent digital nomad, it's really just being able to operate from anywhere using a laptop pretty much to generate your income. But boiling it down to the basics, that's exactly what it's doing, and it sounds really sexy and sounds really attractive, and hey, it's caught my attention over the years too, Coran, there's no doubt about it. But tell us about where that led you to, because this will be pretty interesting, I reckon.
Yeah, so my boss was super excited about offering me this great opportunity, and I had to. We were talking about three things over coffee, and he wanted to launch with the best news first. And I said, "Sorry, mate, but can we do that last?" And he kind of gave me a strange look. And then we discussed the other things that were going on, and then he went into his pitch, and I said, "Sorry, mate, I've got a better opportunity." And he said, "What's that?" I said, "We're leaving in it was a month, 5 weeks actually. I gave a lot of notice. It was 5 weeks time. We were staying for our friend's wedding, and then we were leaving the Monday after." So he said, "Where are you going to?" I said, "We're just going to travel the world." So being that I was working at Flight Centre, that kind of shook my team a little. They're like, "How the hell are you doing that?
Yeah.
How much money do you have?" And I was a little bit coy about saying too much at the time, because people just thought I was a multimillionaire and off doing it. What the reality was, we'd saved up a bunch of money. We had our house that my sister and her family actually moved in to rent from us.
Okay.
So we had the rental there. We had our little nest egg that we thought would be maybe a couple of years on the road. Yeah. If we were staying in cheaper places. So one of the hacks when you get started on this is you can actually reduce your cost of living quite substantially once you start traveling. Yeah. So as an exercise in the beginning, my wife ran the numbers while we were traveling. This will blow your mind, and hopefully the audience's mind. Yeah. We were spending, just on our expenses in Australia, we were spending about 85 grand a year.
Yeah.
At the time.
Yep.
Once we left, we went to 23, 24 countries the first year of traveling. Wow. And we spent under $40,000.
Love it. And it's, because you don't need all the frills and spills and the cost of living in, depending on where you're travelling, obviously. Eating and staying somewhere can be next to nil if you're clever about how you do it. Share a bit of that with us, mate, because I think that's one of the vision that my good wife and I have is that we're not far away from being in a position where our income is going to be very comfortably generated here in Australia, but we're going to have a series of locations around the world where we can live like kings at a fraction of the cost. So, because Australia is a relatively fairly expensive place to live, and we've tried already Mendoza in South America, and we're looking at Vietnam next year, and there's a number of other locations where you can really enjoy a fantastic lifestyle on the smell of an oily rag. So share a bit of that with us. I'm pretty interested, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. So there's a couple ways to look at this. One is to wait until retirement and then figure this out. So particularly in Southeast Asia, I've met a few people that are retired. They're enjoying the lower cost of living, but they have a fixed income or a finite amount of funds. Right. So they they can kind of get caught on this trap where they're living on low cost, but they kind of get stuck there. Yeah. They don't really have options.
Yeah.
So this is where the quote unquote digital nomad scene comes into play. So a lot of the people I know, Kevin included, set up somewhere like Chiang Mai, northern Thailand. The cost of living is low, but the lifestyle is really high.
Yeah.
And this allows you to, like if similar to what we did, we had a nest egg saved up, and we could have just stayed in Chiang Mai and worked on the business side. Yeah. And that first year, we just wanted to see as many places as we can. So as we could, it wasn't really about setting up a business.
Yeah.
Ironically, it happened at the same time, but that's just because I am who I am. So you could essentially save up some cash, sell your house, whatever it is. You could go over there and try and figure out how to make money without the job. That's one way to do it. And you see a lot of guys and girls between, say, 20 and 30 doing this right now.
Yeah.
There's quite a big scene. There's a few thousand people in Chiang Mai, at least, in doing exactly this.
Wow.
So that's one way to do it. What we found was we wanted to try out a few different places and just see the world. We did one trip after a year before we left. We went to Kota Kinabalu in Borneo, and then we made a decision last minute because of some conditions that happened while we were there. Just things weren't going right on this holiday for some reason, and we thought, you know what, everyone we know goes to Phuket, so let's just go find a flight to Phuket, and we'll go see if we can change and like it over there. So we did. We flew to Phuket, paid extra fees and stuff, didn't really care, just whatever, get us to Phuket. We had a great time, and we were staying in a 4-star hotel, and I forget the actual numbers, but we worked out that we could stay in this 4-star hotel with breakfast, 24-hour room service, cleaners every day, right across from the beach, and it would be less than half what our mortgage was, maybe even less. And that kind of wakes you up. You're like, wait a minute, if I just move, my lifestyle can improve dramatically. Over we've been traveling full-time or location independent for over 5 years now, maybe 5.5 years.
Nice.
And the amount of things that have changed for us kind of sound a little bit silly, but my wife and I, when we're celebrating an occasion, anniversary or whatever, going to a restaurant just doesn't mean anything anymore because we often eat out 2-3 times a day anyway, wherever we are. And it's just the norm. So for us to actually celebrate something, we have to do something over the top, which is fun, but it kind of makes you think, wow, how far have we come? When back in Australia, we'd eat out only on special occasions, and we'd get takeaway once a week, and that was it. We wouldn't even go to the movies that much because it costs so bloody much to go to the movies in Australia.
Yeah, good call. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. Over a period of time like that, it would completely change your thinking around all of that. So okay, that's really good. So you're enjoying the world. You're looking around. Being the person that shoot first and ask questions later, you obviously, I guess, swimming in that quite significant pond of people in Chiang Mai or similar locations elsewhere where people are starting online businesses, decide to have a crack. Talk us about what happened there, mate, if you can.
Yeah, so the first location we went was Vietnam, actually.
Okay.
And my goal was, after leaving Australia, was to not do anything business-related, not just holiday. And it took 2 weeks before I was sitting in a hotel in Hoi An in the middle of Thailand, and I got an email from someone about how to build an e-commerce business, and that was this little spark that got me started. Also, another side note, my wife she's a little younger than me, so she had a visa for the UK, so she could go and work in the UK and live in the UK. So we thought, okay, we'll do some we'll do a bit of Vietnam, and then we'll go over to the UK and check out London. Okay. And after everything was booked, we didn't realize this was the case because we hadn't looked into it. It's funny now, but I couldn't get a visa. So I could only stay. They do 6 months on arrival for Australians. Okay. And we just thought, we'll just pop back in and everything will be cool. No, that doesn't work like that. So, a bit novice to the travel side. So while my wife did try working in London, that was one of her things she wanted to try out. She got a job in London for a couple of months. It was a contract position, and while she was at work, I was learning how to build e-commerce businesses. Right. And a guy I'd met in Vietnam was from London who had an e-commerce business. I was consulting for him as well, so we were testing out how to make some money while we were going around, and that was a really interesting spot. At the same time, this kind of got me into what I'm doing now. I was looking at visa options for me to stay in London. Why on earth would you want to stay in London year round? I'm not sure. It's a cool city, but the weather is shocking.
And isn't there periods where you've only got daylight for about 4 hours a day? So I'd want to be well away from there during that period of the year.
Yeah, and coming from Brizzy, mate, that's just fucking horrible.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, all right, cool.
Yeah, so I was looking into that, and one of the visa options is an investor visa. So if you invest X amount, you could buy a business in the UK and get a visa. So I started looking at businesses for sale in the UK and started thinking, what could I do with my marketing experience? Could I maybe make a business better, and what were the multiples and that type of stuff? At the same time, I think it was the guy who was doing the e-commerce training linked to a report that was put out by a company called Centurica. They still do this. They do an annual report of website sales and anything with a website, and they talk about multiples and different verticals and stuff. And they mentioned at the start of this report 5 years ago that was the first year that they saw multiples for online businesses being higher than brick and mortar offline businesses.
Right.
And because I was literally looking at offline businesses, brick and mortar stuff, I saw the same thing. I thought, wow, there's something to this. Yeah. Why are people paying more for a website that isn't real? You can't touch it, feel it. Of course it's real, but they it's not physical.
Exactly. Intangible.
Why are people paying more? And exactly. It's intangible. The reason for that was they could generate the income from anywhere. Yeah. So I got really interested in this topic, and at the same time, I know you're into property, but this was my experience. We had a single house in the north of Brisbane, and what my sister was paying was, the goal was to cover the expenses, really. Yeah. But what we noticed was if anything went wrong with the property, we'd have to dip into our own pocket. Right. And if we even went to market rates of what we could rent the property for, the situation was pretty much the same. Yep. They weren't really paying that much less than market rate. Yep. So we decided to sell the house. Yep. And that was a fun experience. I was in Vietnam at the time while we were trying to sell this house. Yep. And it sold in a couple of weeks, which was great. The property market was super hot. I literally don't even watch it anymore, so I'm not sure what it's like now. But back then, it sold in a couple of weeks. Yeah. We priced it to sell and cashed out. We made a good return on that, and thanks to Aussie tax laws, we didn't have to pay tax on that gain because it was our principal place of residence still. Yep. So that was a nice little windfall, and I thought, well, I've been looking at all these online businesses, why don't I start investing, seeing if I can buy something, build it, grow it, and sell it. Yep. And that was my approach. So I ended up building a pretty sizable portfolio of money-making websites, for want of a better word. They were all different types of affiliate or affiliate AdSense kind of income. So had about 25 or 30 of those cranking out good cash. The e-commerce business that I'd started to build from scratch was also starting to make some money. So we spent a summer in Berlin where we were literally working the 4-hour work week.
Nice.
And there was about 50 odd friends there from Chiang Mai that we'd met that had all come over to Berlin.
Yeah.
We're having the time of our lives. I mean, beers on the spree every afternoon, and just doing whatever you wanted, which was amazing.
Yeah, amazing.
And at one point, I was drinking a little too much, too often, and I woke up one morning and I thought, hang on a minute, why aren't I really happy? What's missing here?
Okay.
And I thought, it's kind of funny to say. I mean, you might hear this from someone who has a massive multi-million-dollar exit say this occasionally. I've got friends that are in that spot right now where they sell and they have this money or they have this income, and it's not what they thought it would be. And that was definitely the case for me.
Yeah. It's interesting.
So I was
just jumping in there without trying to interrupt your flow too much. I interviewed someone recently who's like a multi-million-dollar business builder, and he's done it 3 times. And every time he sold it, it was like, that's it, I'm never going to do it again. But every time he started another business, because 9 months in, he said he was emotionally and clinically depressed because he had no purpose, he had no drive, there was nothing to get out of bed for. He's realised that he needs that driving purpose to keep him motivated and keep him happy, basically. So he actually enjoys the cut and thrust of building a business. And it sounds like you had a pretty similar experience.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I firmly believe that. I think the only real reason to get out of bed in the morning is to go achieve something, whatever that is. It doesn't need to be business related, but whatever that is for you, and it just so happens that that's what it is for me.
Yeah.
So at this time, while I wouldn't say depressed, I was just kind of disillusioned with where I was.
Yeah.
And I couldn't tell anyone this because people would have hated me for saying it.
I love it.
It was all internal, right? It was internal conflict.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I had friends reaching out to me saying, how do you even evaluate these businesses? How do you know the income's real? I'll take you out to lunch if you can tell me more about this. And a friend of mine was running an event and he said, can you come and speak about this stuff?
Okay.
I actually declined.
Really?
I declined speaking about it at the time, yeah, which is funny now because I will crawl over broken glass to speak somewhere these days. But back then I just was like, look, mate, I don't know what I'm really doing, what I want to do longer term with this, so I'll pass. Okay. And that was interesting, though, because I had people coming up to me saying, everyone pretty much had online businesses, so they were saying, how do I prepare for a sale? How do I evaluate for sale?
Yep.
What are multiples looking like? Who are the buyers? All this type of stuff.
Right.
And I had some really interesting conversations. So I was pretty much a broker for free at the time, and I was loving it. I didn't care. I was making way more money. Well, I was making no money from this. I think I got bought one lunch, but everything else was making me all this money. But this free stuff I was doing on the side was just really interesting.
Right.
And what I've realized since then was a couple of things. One, with my personality, I need to be talking to people, engaging with people, helping people is kind of the thing that gets me out of bed in the morning. But then also, as a side note, the founders I work with, so I only work with founders, so people that have built the business from scratch.
Right.
And some of these guys, the drive and the tenacity of these people is just super inspirational.
Yes.
It really makes me fucking lazy, feel lazy. I'm like, wow, if this guy's doing this, I'm doing something wrong. But no, for the most part, the clients are amazing. And equally now on the buy side, the investors I'm working with are super sharp people, have really big plans. And I've finally found an arena where I'm not the one thinking the biggest in the room. That's really important to me.
Yeah, awesome. That's a pretty big and early realisation, Coran. So that's pretty exciting. So you're now in the space of dealing with both ends, people building, people buying. and probably in a fairly rare location, really, in the context that you're getting to see the good, the bad, and the ugly right across the board in all shapes, sizes, and types of businesses where the FBA or fulfillment by Amazon business, and perhaps just explain what fulfillment by Amazon is for those that may not have heard that term, if you can.
Sure. So you may have heard the term FBA Business, which I think is a bit misleading, because anything can be an FBA business. Doesn't mean it's sellable or should be bought, but we'll dig into that. Yeah. But FBA stands for, like you said, Fulfillment by Amazon. So essentially, you're using the Amazon platform to market, sell, and fulfill the delivery of your product, which is a pretty great ecosystem. Yep. Amazon in the US is driving around 45% of online e-commerce sales. So it's a behemoth. So if you can get your products on there, it's a really good space.
Yeah. Yeah. Now let's talk, before we sort of get into the nitty gritties of the buy sell thing, because it's the old story. By the time the taxi drivers heard about it, it's probably too late. But there's a lot of interesting talk around the generational wealth that people are making in these style of FBA businesses. Is that the case? If so, what does it look like? And if someone was looking to either start and build a business and or invest in buying one of these businesses, who are they and what should they look like, and should they do it? I mean, there's about 15 questions in that, but can you sort of just talk us through some of those key things, just so that people are hearing the real info rather than the dream that they might be picking up from listening to information from other sources?
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to. So let's unpack that. The first one is the generational wealth. So 2 years ago, we started the FBA broker in mid-2016. Right. Back then, the average valuation I was doing was around $300,000 to $400,000. So call it $350,000 US was the average size of business that we were valuing back then. Okay. Fast forward to 2018, we now have a minimum list price of $1 million USD. Wow. So now we're doing 7- and 8-figure deals instead of low 6-figure deals. So the market itself has grown significantly, and we are now, all of our clients effectively, we're making millionaires when they sell. Yep. So there's a lot to that. So it's not just, hey, I want to be a millionaire, come to you with nothing and we'll make you a millionaire. Yep. There's a lot of work that goes behind that. So I'd love to unpack what I'm seeing as businesses that are being built right now that can continue to be sold for 7-8 figures, and ones that can't. Yeah.
Good. Let's dig into that.
So in the FBA space, you'll typically see training of how to put in $500 and create a multi-million-dollar business. That's bullshit. Plain and simple, that is bullshit. Yeah. It does not happen like that. So the e-commerce business I built, we actually sold, and we took some of that cash and put it into a business that ended up, we sell health supplements. It ended up being an Amazon-based business. Okay. That wasn't the intention. Excuse me. That's just what happened. Okay. And at the same time, I shortly after, started in the brokerage space. So that's kind of how I got into it. So I've been on both sides of the fence. I've been a buyer, seller, and now a broker. Right. And in the FBA world, there's a lot of ways to make money through Amazon. Not all of them are an asset that you can sell. So the only real way to define this is what I focus on now. So when people ask me what I do, I say I work with founders of consumer product brands that have an Amazon sales channel. Right. So that's really what I work with. Yep. So the things that are selling that have real value that investors want is when you can solve a real problem for a customer. Yep. And they love your products and you can give them more products. So ideally, this is the cool thing with Amazon that no one really talks about. Everyone in courses talks about how to find what's selling, go source it from China, throw it onto Amazon, get it ranking, and you'll be a millionaire. A few years ago, that actually worked, mind you. Now it's getting really hard.
Yeah, I was going to say
go from scratch.
Yeah, like any pioneering business, anyone who jumps into that pioneering exercise, if they're half smart, can do all right. But we're probably at the stage of the life cycle now where the people selling the gold pans are making the money, as in the courses to flog this idea, whereas the people who end up with the gold pans are looking at pennies rather than pounds. Am I reading that right?
Yes, absolutely. And, the ecosystem changes so fast that a course that was written 2 years ago, I have friends that sell courses, so nothing against the courses. I mean, that's how I got into e-commerce. I did a course. So it helps to learn. But I wouldn't take everything you learn as gospel. You have to be willing to figure it out yourself. And what I've seen recently is people literally giving up because the old ways don't work. The market's changed, Amazon's changed, the customers have changed.
Of course, it's maturing.
And the rules have changed. So, yeah, absolutely, it's maturing. There's less space at the top on the first page of Amazon search results for a lot of products. So there's less room to break in and get an easy win. So what is working right now, if you're starting from scratch, is figuring out a problem first. So building a real business, basically, figuring out what your target market has a problem with. The great thing with Amazon is you can dig into reviews. You can buy these products, you can try them out, you can look at the reviews, see what people are complaining about, and then make it better. Right. So a friend of mine does this in one of the sports niches. He's really into that. So he's been testing his products. He gives the products to his friends. He makes them better, tests them, and then sells them. So while they're not proprietary or patented or anything, they are better than what's available on the marketplace. And, if you can build, if you find that one first thing, so say you're in this niche, you love this market, you find a solution to a problem that people want to buy, and then you find other products around there that they'll also buy before, during, or after that purchase. Then you're on a winner. If you can build products around that audience and build a brand, even if you're not selling a ton of making a ton of revenue outside of Amazon, if Amazon is your main channel, but you've built this audience outside of Amazon that you can actually go and talk to. You could go to an event and sell your products in person. This comes back to the selling thing, right?
Of course.
Don't be afraid to sell.
Exactly.
If you can get to that point, that will always be sellable. And I can go into the details of what makes a business sellable once it's in that spot. But that's really what we look for. And that's what the smart money in this space is looking for. Can you give us a sort of a real example of what you're talking about here? So just so we put some shape around what sort of product and what sort of modifications or improvements. I'd just like to put some shape around that if we can. Sure. Unfortunately, that's going to be a little bit tricky because in this space, you'll find that a lot of people don't talk about their niche.
Of course. So that's their IP.
Giving you an actual example, I can't. What I'm trying to think of is something outside of our clients that would give a reference point.
Gotcha.
So,
understand.
So I have a ton of Apple products on my desk. I know that you're not going to build necessarily the next Apple, but I'll explain why this is interesting. So the Apple products are higher priced than their competitors. Arguably, in some ways, maybe better, maybe not, but they really know their audience. Right? So they understand what you want next, and give you the best experience while buying the product. I'm in Barcelona, Spain right now, and I bought some accessories for my laptop over at the the store here, and the Apple store is absolutely packed.
Yeah.
Because everyone wants Apple products.
Yeah.
So this isn't exactly replicatable, but if you I read somewhere that when Steve Jobs came back to Apple, that he said to the team, he got kicked out as CEO, then brought back in, and he had a table in front of him, and he said, all we're doing is what's on this table. So if it doesn't fit on this table, we're getting rid of it, because they had expanded the product line too far. Yeah. So they really understand their core audience, and they deliver products to them. Because of their marketing and positioning, they can charge higher prices for arguably something that you can get elsewhere, or maybe even now some of their products aren't even the best products in the marketplace. No. But you still love them.
The brand is so strong that it's almost a prestige item now when you're carrying a... There's a culture, a cult that's actually developed around the whole Apple branding piece. So I totally get that. Yeah. So what I'm hearing is, and what you're saying is, which is no different to actually starting any business, is identifying a real problem to a real set of customers, and then marketing to them so that they see you as the pinnacle of the best person to provide that. And then you add things on that are all still part of that. So you're extending that, and you're creating repeat and loyal customers as a consequence of that. So that's just fundamental good business sense, really, if you're going to build a sustainable, profitable and sellable enterprise, which is awesome. But what I'm hearing then, that the old days of white labelling a baseball cap and flogging it on Amazon, that's a go nowhere proposition, basically, is what I'm hearing. So am I right then in saying that the days of just creating this sort of side hustle where you've got this little thing off on the side without generating much time or input and doing it alongside what you might be doing during the day is probably fool's gold? That what we're saying is, if you're going to invest in this thing, or you're going to build a FBA style business operation, then it's probably got to be a full-time commitment. Am I right in saying that or not?
Only if you're wanting to sell the asset.
Right.
So there's still plenty of arbitrage side hustle opportunities. They're just not sellable.
Yes.
So you can still make money, and probably short-term cash. So it depends on your goals.
Yeah.
So if you're wanting to build something large that you can have a large exit that can change your family's future, you need to put in a lot more work than previously.
Yeah. You're building a real business, really, with staff, infrastructure, marketing. It's a real deal business, is what we're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not for everyone. You can definitely start this part-time, but if you don't have the drive, or members on your team, founding team, that have really strong financial skills, really strong passion about creating a better product, physical product, you don't have a niche that you live and breathe, it's going to be really tough to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just want to test something, because one of the major risks I see to this long term, and I'm not talking short term, but in the long term, I mean, Amazon is clearly a very smart business, because they're creating the marketplace where everyone's going to play, and they're making it relatively easy, and they're incentivizing people to do that at the moment, because they're just growing their reach, because they want every man, woman and his drover's dog to be doing business via Amazon. Won't they reach a point where they've got enough of the market capture where they'll start tightening the screws and changing the equation, which they've probably already done to some degree, but it'll start squeezing margins and making things a little bit tougher? So that I'm just thinking in the terms of the lifeline of this business, and when to sell before perhaps that major current opportunity starts to dwindle. What's your thinking around that?
Yeah, so ideally, I think it would be really short-sighted to build something from scratch right now just to sell, only based on Amazon.
Yeah.
And that might sound weird, because that's a lot of the business we do, but that's what I'm seeing in the marketplace right now.
Yeah.
Sorry, man, I'm still getting over a cold. Okay.
You're right.
So yeah, with Amazon, so the way I would look at it if I was starting from scratch right now is Amazon's a great way to prove the model.
Yep.
So you can find the problem, you can get some sales, you can build a large business, 7-figure revenue business in a couple of years.
Okay.
We've got clients that have built 7-8-figure revenue businesses in a couple of years using Amazon as the base.
Wow.
But the thing to think about there, that's unheard of in traditional brick and mortar business.
Yep.
You'd never do that in a retail store. That's impossible.
Exactly.
Unless you had the best location in the world.
Yeah, an amazing marketing.
So, oh, absolutely. Yeah, you need the perfect storm.
Yeah.
You founded fidget spinners or something. But, which is another story. But, so you can... If you want to build something sustainable that's sellable and you're thinking in the back of your mind, this single channel could change at any time. And Amazon, you're right, they are squeezing margin. They're increasing, the commission is flat, so it's 15% of the sale is a selling commission on Amazon. But every other fee is flexible. So their fulfillment fees, their storage fees, advertising fees, all of these fees just keep increasing. Right. And they're really just trying to figure out how to make the most amount of money possible out of every transaction.
As
so that is their goal.
Yep, of course.
Yes, exactly. So you get the option to sell to their customers, but on the other hand, they'll charge you for the privilege. So longer term, it's really about how else can you reach a customer. Yeah. And that really goes back to the knowing the customer's problem, knowing the target market really well. If you can go to an event and people are lined up at your stall or tent, you're onto something.
Yeah.
And you could definitely build something outside of Amazon. And you can use some of the profits that your business is generating to do that.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't want to do that. And I get it. It's hard. So right now we're seeing a window of opportunity where a business like that has some potential outside of Amazon can be sold. What I'm predicting is in the next 6 to 12 months, maybe it's 24 months, a real tough thing to sell. So I think, especially if it's a random mix of products that don't have a single core target market, that buyers are getting less interested in that type of business. And eventually it will be, you need to be diversified because Amazon will change. We're going through a deal at the moment. The investment manager that's vetting this business is actually saying, look, I love the business. Here's my offer. And here's why. And one of the things he's looking at is the margin compression or the fee increase from 2016 to 2018 is what he's looking at.
Of course.
And he's like, okay, well, this increase is significant and it's going to increase. So I can't base my future on, because the bulk of the income is Amazon, I can't base my offer on future revenue staying the same.
Yes. Exactly.
Or future margin staying the same at least.
Exactly.
So he knows, so he knows that he needs to take some of the cash out of this business to diversify.
Yeah.
So that's factoring into his offer.
Of course. Smart. Very smart. So, okay, well, let's say tomorrow I decided that I wanted to build a FBA-style business. Who am I? How much cash have I got to have in my pocket? What am I up for? What's the journey look like? And with the crystal ball firmly in hand, what sort of an exit strategy am I likely to be adopting, mate? Can you put some shape around that for us?
Yeah, and that's a tough one. That's evolving pretty quickly. So I can say what I'm seeing right now as far as what buyers are looking for now. In 2, 3, 5, 10 years, that could change significantly. The first question I would ask is this business model for you? Is the first question I would ask.
Right.
Because you may hear someone say, I had a 7-figure exit, and think, oh, great, I want to be a millionaire. How do I do that? And I did it in 4 years. Oh, great. Yeah, I can do that in 4 years. You can underrate how much pain, struggle, sacrifice that you actually have to go through to get to the other side of that.
Yeah.
So that's number one. If you know someone that sells physical products, even if it's not on Amazon, if it's their own products they're sourcing, designing, sourcing, go talk to them. See what the day-to-day looks like. See if that in any way, shape, or form looks like something you want to do. Number one.
Yeah.
Number two is, how much capital do you have?
Yes.
So if you have, say, up to $50 or maybe even $100,000 to put into this, whether it's cash or leverage. I wouldn't leverage off this to get started.
Yeah.
But if you're working with 5 figures of cash, you're probably in the build category.
Right.
So I would literally go and look at all the things you like doing, all the things your friends like doing. What sports do they do? What hobbies do they have? What are they really interested in? What do people around you spend stupid amounts of money on and don't even blink?
Yes.
And start there.
Yeah.
And figure out if you can get in where the money is already flowing, even before looking on Amazon. That's what I would do.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of a book. Oh, there's a really good book. It's called The Boron Letters. It was written by Gary Halbert. He was one of the top copywriters of all time. He lays this out perfectly. It's called The Boron Letters because he was actually in jail at the time, and he was writing. I love this. He was writing letters to his son Bond about how to get into marketing and life. This book is hilarious.
I love it,
and it's just a great read, and it will literally tell you how to find a target market and how to find products. Not necessarily products, because he talks about information products,
right,
but how to find a niche and how to leverage that niche. So and then how to sell it, more importantly. Awesome. So if you read that, that'll give you a good primer. I would look at this even without Amazon, literally, and then add Amazon on. Once you figure out what the products are, the target market, for them and stuff, go on Amazon and see if there's a market for them. Are people buying them? There's a ton of tools that tell you how much things are selling. Take that with a grain of salt. They're not all correct because Amazon doesn't share that data. Right. There's very few of them that match once we see a business, very few of those tools actually match, but it can give you a good sense of how much sales volume is in that category, right, and then see if it's worth it. One thing that's underrated, and I think not enough people talk about this, is margin. You really want massive margins to make it worthwhile. You don't want to go in with skinny margins because your margin's going to be compressed by so many things. Yep. Amazon being the biggest, if that's your main sales channel. Yep. Reaching your customer is expensive. Any problems with the product, you're going to have to eat. So you need to have cash flow to reinvest in the business. Yes. So if you're thinking longer term for an exit, you really want to be putting everything back in the business and potentially even more capital than you start with, just to get that snowball rolling, and then off to the races. You build that business as much as you can, keep an eye on your margin, and then own the customer as much as you can, and then you could potentially go for an exit. Yeah,
what you've just described, Coran, in an online world is exactly what my wife and I did with our rent roll business. So we sussed out the opportunity, looked at the competition, started slowly and surely. We had for the first 5 to 6 years, had a simple reinvest before reward strategy. So everything went back into the business. We worked tirelessly, and my wife in particular, who drove that business, worked incredible hours in the first 5 years. The business wasn't ready for sale until 10, and it was about 12 before we actually sold it. And by then it was bulletproof. It had a great swag of committed landlords in long-term contracts, great properties with high rents, very low vacancies, and a very low debtors exercise. So it was a really good quality business, and therefore, in fact, it was so good in the property management world that buyers didn't believe the numbers. And which becomes its own challenge, because if you stand out, people don't believe it. So we ended up doing pretty well in that context. But what I'm hearing you say is that there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in going through that process. And if you think this is just something that you can throw some money at and then it's going to look after itself, then you're kidding yourself, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's the true story there, is you're building a business. So ideally you want to think longer term.
Yeah.
You know, if you could build this thing, grow it for 10, 12 years and really get behind it, that's ideally what you want to build. You could potentially sell that earlier in the space if the metrics were right.
Yeah.
But the buyer coming in wants to see that runway. They're not going to buy something they think is going to die tomorrow.
Of course. Exactly. It's got to have a history. It's got to have committed clients. There's got to be the clients locked into contracts or regular repeat clients that make up a big percentage, and a diversification of the product range, and all of those things would have to be there. If I'm going to, let's look at it from the other side. So that's from someone looking to build and sell, and let's look as an investor now. So let's say I'm looking at a vehicle that's going to give me a cash flow, and I don't want to go through that pain. I just want to pick up something that's going to potentially help replace my income so that I've got some time back to do other things. One, is that achievable? And if it is, what sort of money have I got to spend? And what's the likely lifeline, given all these competitive pressures and the control that Amazon has over that? Is that a realistic thing that's going to give me a regular income for any sustainable period of time?
Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't look at it as a passive income.
No.
Once this anything online that moves so fast, once it becomes passive and you're not paying attention to it, will whittle and die over time.
Yep.
It will.
Yep.
So I would only invest in this space if you had an unfair advantage.
Right.
So what's an unfair advantage in this space? Well, one is capital. Because if you have access to more capital, a lot of these businesses, our supplement business isn't growing; it's actually in decline. And the reason I didn't sell this even before it was in decline was I ran the numbers. I thought, okay, well, what could I sell this business for? And I looked at the capital return I'm actually getting from products. So one of the hidden gems in a physical product business is the return on capital you get just from the inventory itself.
Right.
So right now we're putting 35% in our pocket after all of our fees just for the amount we spend on inventory.
Nice.
I can't get that anywhere else. That's ridiculous.
That is ridiculous.
So for me, if I didn't have the brokerage, I'd be building that. I'd actually be on the acquisition side, but I'd be building that. I'd be reinvesting that capital to generate more of that crazy return.
Yeah.
So that's how I look at it, as built it from scratch.
Yeah.
If you're looking to acquire and grow, when you know that your products return that much capital and you're coming in with more capital, there's a potential for you to deploy more capital, get a better return.
Yeah.
But the unfair advantage you really want on top of that is an understanding of something in the supply chain.
Yeah.
Whether that's from acquiring the customer elsewhere outside of Amazon. Is it you know Chinese sourcing, you know manufacturing, you know selling on Amazon, you understand packaging, you have something else that you can bring to this table other than just, this business has made X amount over the last 12 months. That's a good return. I can get it for 2 to 3 times that net profit number. That's great. I'll get my money back. It's 30% return per annum. Yeah. It doesn't actually work like that.
No.
Especially, I mentioned before we started recording, we passed on probably 90% of the businesses we see, and there's a reason for that. It's because I started as an investor.
Yeah.
And my whole goal with this is to only bring high-quality brands to market, brands being the key point here is something that's a real brand that an investor can look at and say, okay, I can grow this. There's cash flow to invest, but I can also put more capital in and make it more defensible and sustainable over time.
Yeah.
And that's really the type of business that I would be looking to buy if I was on the investor side. The downside of that is in the lower price points under $1 million, it's really hard to find.
Right.
We track and report on all the public business sales that have an Amazon sales channel that sell physical products.
Yeah.
We've been doing this for over 2 years.
Yeah.
And for 2018, we've done a half-yearly review. It's on our website, and you can see that the sell-through rates under $1 million, 10%.
Wow.
We're tracking 220-odd listings worldwide right now. So there's a lot of businesses for sale, which sounds like a lot of opportunity, but the vast majority of those will not sell, and quite frankly, should not be bought. So really know what you're doing, do some research, reach out to people that are selling on Amazon, find out where the opportunity really is, and be smart about it. Do your research. Don't blindly buy this stuff because unless you just want to have a play with it and you don't care about your money. That's one way to do it.
Yeah.
I've often
go on. Sorry.
I often get asked if you have what's the perfect amount to start with.
Yep.
And I have actual Amazon sellers that reach out to me or that are in the space, and they say, I've got $100,000. What should I buy? And that's really not enough, in my opinion, 100,000 US, because the vast majority of deals under 100,000 are that small for a reason.
Yeah.
So maybe they've got to a point in the market where they're the leader, and that's all it's going to do. Maybe they've quickly found a niche and they're just offloading it before the thing tanks. There's no longevity, no history there.
Yeah.
You see a lot of this.
Of course.
We see everything that's public. So we see a lot of these businesses that just aren't sustainable, really low margin, just not a deal that should be bought. But they're still being bought for different reasons.
Yeah.
So, unfair advantages. You want to build an unfair advantage before you start looking at acquiring. If you do have an unfair advantage, it's an absolute gold mine. It'll take you time to find the right deals, but man, the returns on these can be amazing. If you're coming in with an unfair advantage, you can really do well.
Yeah, because you're then value adding to something that's already existing and taking it to another level. So, so what I'm hearing, I'm just sort of trying to sum this up for those that might be listening to us. So, if I'm going to look at building an FBA business, I've probably got to be starting with 100-odd K-ish. Tell me if I'm wrong. Or somewhere between 50 and 100 that I've got to put in, and then I've got to. This is pretty much a full-time proposition. If I was going to invest, what I'm hearing is into something that is sustainable, then I've probably got to be spending $1 million. Am I getting close to the mark in what you're saying?
Yeah, so you can start with a lot less. I think you can start with a few grand, 10 grand, maybe, to get the ball rolling. From scratch, but you'll need to reinvest, and you'll probably need to put more money in once you figure out what's working, just to get the momentum.
So
on the buy side,
go on, sorry.
Yeah, on the buy side, if I was buying, I would really be looking at the $1 million+ range.
Yeah.
For the most part, the sell-through rate's almost 40% at the 1 to 5 million range.
Yeah.
So for the most part, they're better businesses. Not always, but for the most part, they've actually got some momentum there.
Yeah.
Maybe there's some team members that you can leverage as well.
Yeah.
Some of the smaller businesses don't come with any team at all, so you're really left doing the work yourself.
Right.
So that's a bit of a risk if you've never sold before. And that's not a hard and fast rule. We've seen some smaller deals that would have some upside potential. The upside of the smaller range, $100 to $1 million US, is in list price, is that there's a lot of buyers. So it's really a buyer's market below $1 million, and somewhat a seller's market above $1 million.
Of course.
But it depends what you're coming in with. But yes, if you're on the buy side for this space, you really want access to more capital. I would look at this as a team exercise, not as something I would do on my own.
Right.
Personally,
Right.
People would maybe disagree with that, but that's how I would look at it.
Yeah, I think you're reading the market pretty well. So quantify some sort of margins and return on investment for me. So, let's parallel this with a long-term investor in property here in Australia. So, give an example. Let's say here in Australia, you go out and buy a good quality property for $500,000. It's giving you probably a 5% net return. The cash on cash, because you're leveraging, let's assuming you're borrowing sort of 90% of it, it's pretty high, very high, because you're not using a lot of your cash to secure that asset. And let's say that, a property cycle takes anywhere between 8 and 15 years. So be conservative. Let's say the property doubles in value in 15 years' time. That's probably a fairly average sort of a race that you would run on the property side. Can we parallel that with what you're talking about in the FBA space in terms of cash on cash return, net margin, and the sort of equity or capital growth that you might experience and over what sort of timeline?
Yeah, sure. That's a great example, actually. So this should be a warning, a warning sign for someone looking at this space, is that it's really hard to get debt on a $50,000, $100,000, $500,000 deal,
yes.
even in the millions range.
Yes.
It's super hard to get debt to acquire an online business.
Right.
And you could argue that there's a reason for that.
Yes, well, I've
so
always
for the
said...
most part, you're needing...
Yeah, I just sorry to jump in there, mate, but just to expand on exactly what you're saying, I've always said the fact that a bank will let you borrow 90 to even 95% of a property tells you that the bank sees property as a very safe place to stick their money, because they're not into taking risks and they're about making money themselves. So if it's very difficult to borrow money to get into something, there's a big flashing red light there. Mind you, in saying that, the space that you're playing in is so new and so pioneering to the likes of the conservatives that are likely to be in a lending institution that it would scare the hell out of them anyway, regardless of how good it was.
Yeah, exactly. And with the property, it's super easy. If you stop paying or you die, they go sell the property.
Yeah.
If you buy a business that's operating, that doesn't operate without you, then that's a different story.
Yes.
So for the most part, I'm researching quite heavily the middle market right now, which is in the US they call middle market anything from a $5 million list price to 250 million. Sorry.
Wow.
Is the middle market.
Middle market.
And so yeah. So I'm doing a lot of research in this space myself, because we're starting to have 8-figure deals, and I want to know how the funding works.
Yes.
And this research I'm doing really highlighted a problem at that price point even. So when you've got a business generating 50, 100 million in revenue, your options to funding change, because the risk profile of the business reduces.
Yep.
But then if you get to $1 billion in revenue, the options are wide open. I was talking to a firm that they're probably in the $500 million to $1 billion range of revenues, and they have access to a line of credit that's 6 times EBITDA, so their annual net profit at 2%.
Serious?
Yes.
Good grief, because the quantum is so high that they're still making money out of it. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's because of their history and what they've done and how big their business is.
Yeah.
So the capital markets see that as less risk, and they'll put money in that all day long.
Yeah.
And they don't want much for it because they can't invest wisely. And the higher you go in the sizes of capital deployment, the more capital there actually is.
Yeah.
You hear the term "rich get richer." Well, it's actually true in the capital market too.
Yes.
So even if you think, oh, okay, these guys have $100 billion to spend, surely I could go to them and say, give me $1 million to buy this business, here's the return. When they're trying to get a return, a decent return on that whole $100 billion, investing $1 million for 30% just doesn't make sense.
No.
So that's part of the problem in the financing side.
Okay.
And there's a lot of risk on the low end. So small businesses always struggle to raise capital, to raise debt. And governments around the world often have programs where they'll back the lender to help small businesses get funding and get debt. So that's a little bit on the debt side. So as far as we can really talk about cash returns, because a lot of these deals are done with predominantly equity, so buyer's equity.
Yeah.
So the group buying the business puts in their own cash. Maybe they raise a friends and family round, and or have a rich uncle that backs them.
Yeah.
So that's one of the ways that guys are doing deals in this space. Then deal structure can actually help you a little bit. So maybe you space out the payment, you keep the owner involved in some way, and give them rollover equity moving forward. Or you could use some seller financing. And I can go into what these things are if you like, because that might sound like Chinese.
No, that's okay. We probably don't need to, but what I am keen to just sort of put a little bit of shape around is those key numbers. So what sort of a net return you're likely to see from a revenue perspective? What's your cash on cash? And because you can't leverage, obviously that would limit it to some degree. And then over what period are you likely to see the growth? So let's say a property doubles in 10 to 15 years, and we're seeing a year-on-year capital growth figure of somewhere between 6 and 8% in that sort of vicinity. How does that sort of equation apply to what you're talking about?
Sure. So it's not exactly apples for apples, but I'll explain. So in 2017, out of all the deals we saw closed, the average net margin or average claimed net margin of the businesses that actually sold was 30%.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's massive.
But that's using... That's using a formula called seller discretionary earnings.
Yep.
It's not EBITDA. So EBITDA is earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization.
Yep.
So it's not the actual cash that the owner would put in their pocket. It's how we normalize income.
Yep.
So if you're running the business, you could potentially... One thing it doesn't take into account is how much they're putting into inventory, for example.
Yep.
That's separate. We use a cost of goods sold method. So you need to factor in how much inventory you're going to pay. Also doesn't factor in taxes. So you need to figure out your own tax structure, because yours will be different to the seller in most cases.
Yeah, of course.
And then what you need for growth. So how much would you actually reinvest for growth? So your actual net return that you would put in your pocket on a 30% net margin business could possibly be 15 to 20% after all of that's taken out.
Okay. Still pretty healthy.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And tough to get elsewhere.
Yeah. And the sorts of, again, this is how long's a piece of string, but I'm talking, let's say 10 to 15 years in property before you've doubled your capital. Let's say you've built something from scratch. What sort of a realistic time frame are you looking at to get in a position where you've got a reasonable capital growth on your equity?
Sure. So I'll just close the loop on the buy side, because I think that timeline is actually helpful. So the reason there's a 30% net return is because the multiple that the business will sell for is a multiple of cash flow, or that SDE number, seller discretionary earnings, for the past 12 months. So typically you're seeing a list price anywhere from 2 to 3 times what the business made over the past 12 months. So in essence, you can get your money back in theory in 3 years' time. buying at a 3x multiple. It may or may not exactly pan out like that, but that's what you're looking at. But the thing you're missing, or we haven't really talked too much about, is the return on capital for inventory. Yeah. So yes, you need to deploy more capital into inventory, but that's a second cash on cash return engine that you have inside the business, and you can always liquidate inventory, right? So there's two returns that you're looking at in a physical product e-commerce based business.
Yes. Yeah, good call. Because I keep thinking services because that's the business I'm in. So that's a good call. Yeah, awesome, mate. Look, that's been a very useful discussion to put some reality around the living the dream scenario that is often put out there that you pick up elsewhere, and I really appreciate you going into quite some detail and putting some shape around that, mate. I think it's going to really allow the listeners to make some more informed decisions around whether that's something they've one, have an interest in, or two, have the ability to even consider. So that's been very useful, thank you. But coming back to yourself now, mate, what's the question I generally like to ask, and we do that of anyone we look after here in our business, is what's your dream lifestyle look like? Does it differ from your current lifestyle? And with you, probably not. And what are you going to be doing to invest to either bridge a gap, if there is one, or more importantly, make that sustainable long term?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. So since my Berlin experience, I make a point of never settling. So to say where I'm at right now would be against my forward momentum. So I'm very happy with my lifestyle. I will put that out there for sure. I get to live in cool different locations. I got asked to speak in London, and I was on a plane a week later from Chicago to London. Just done. Let's go. Awesome. So that's cool. On the what am I investing in? So right now, our brokerage is growing super fast. So my actual workday lifestyle is pretty horrible right now. Excuse me. Like you were saying, building the rent roll business, you need to put in the work, right? So to get that return. So right now it's a lot of grinding. I love 80-90% of what I do, so it's fine. But I am investing in building out my team and building out systems in the actual business to make it more sustainable. My goal is to actually be able to do deals without myself being involved. And that's not because I don't want to do deals. It's just I know to expand, I'm going to need to do that. So this year we'll do, say, 20 million odd in transactions. Next year I want to do 100 million. So that's a leap. I'm not going to be able to do that on my own. So that's something I'm heavily investing in time, money, and energy, is building a team, training them up. And I think we can build something really sustainable here. I often get asked, what do I think about the Amazon space, and is it going to evaporate over time? And I think Amazon will change, but I think our core business of helping founders of consumer product brands prepare and sell their business when it's right for them is always going to be there. It's always been there, always will be there. So we want to focus more on that. So that's what I'm investing in heavily. Also, on a personal level, I'm investing in a visa for the US and getting set up over there. My wife and I, as much as we love the freedom of traveling around, we do want a home base. So we're looking at options to do that right now, which will take time, energy, and money. So I'm pretty excited about that. So that's what I'm working on. Yeah,
awesome, mate. That's fantastic. Well, look, I'm mindful of your time. You've been very generous so far. But there's a couple of the old bushfire lightning round that I like to sort of close off the podcast on with some regular questions that the audience are really keen to get your thoughts on. So I might kick straight into that, mate. What's your favourite quote and why?
I think I mentioned it before is Highest and Best Use from Jay Abraham.
Yes.
It's the perfect thing to ask yourself when you're looking at anything. Yeah. Is this the highest and best use that I could get from whatever I'm doing? And that served me really well.
Yeah, that's a cracker, because if you start your day with that question, this is the highest and best use of my time, then that will soon sort out what your priorities are. It's an absolute cracker. All right, what about, and you mentioned a couple of good books already, but in addition to those, is there a top book that you'd recommend people read, and again, why?
Sure. So in this realm of physical products and investing, a couple of books that I can't just give one, because I read a lot. I've been known to read 2 books a week, so I'll just pull up my Audible and see what's the top stuff. So yeah. I read a book recently that if you're looking to invest in businesses, is probably the perfect book to read. It's called I Love Capitalism, An American Story, by Ken Langone. He's the co-founder of Home Depot in the US. So he's someone that I really admire and look up to. He started in investment banking and then really took off once he started investing in businesses. Yeah. He's 83 years old now, works 7 days a week, holidays with his staff and clients, and loves every minute of it. He said he wouldn't sleep if he didn't have to. So he lives and breathes what he does.
Love it.
I think if I could get to that age and still be loving it, that would be awesome.
I'm right with you.
The Snowball.
Yes, the old Warren Buffett special. Yep.
You've read that?
Yeah, it's a cracker.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
As far as a good story, Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. He's the founder of Nike as well. That was a great book. And Total Recall, somewhat controversially, Arnold Schwarzenegger's autobiography is amazing.
I agree. Arnie's sometimes misaligned, but if you look at his life from woe to go, he's really ticked some boxes. There's no question about it. He's
big fan of property too.
He is. No, you're absolutely right. Okay, now this one's a little bit left field for you, given you're a globetrotter, but it's something that's near and dear to the hearts of a lot of Aussies. What's the top thing that you've done to minimise your tax?
Oh man, I've gone round in circles on this for a few years. So I love Australia for a couple of reasons. One of them is our tax system, for the most part. If once you actually cut ties with Australia, you're no longer tax liable in Australia. Yep. So I love Australia for that. I think that they're going to tighten up on this in the future, and we're planning accordingly. But that's what I managed to do. But literally, physically leaving the country will actually, if you set things up right, will mean a zero tax situation in Australia if you remove all ties, which isn't easy to do. So that's a very extreme way to minimize taxes.
Yeah, but I can see what you're doing, and then depending on when you then decide to put your income, there's a whole bunch of quite beneficial countries around the world that mean that you're minimising your tax as well, so I'm sure you're probably taking advantage of that, which is awesome. Okay, what's the worst and the best piece of investment advice that you've ever received, Coran?
Ooh. Related to this conversation, it wasn't advice. It was advice in my own head. was looking at returns on an asset, a digital asset, so a website for sale, and expecting that return to continue. That's just a novice approach. Yeah. And I bit the bullet pretty hard on that one. That's I've had the good and bad of that. Best advice I've ever received. That's a good question. So a couple of years ago, before I started at FBA Broker, I was actually in Barcelona at a bar at a conference talking to a friend of mine, and we were talking about how to get into the brokerage space. And I was saying, look, there's all these firms that have been around for 10, 15 years in the online space. How do I ever compete? And at the same time, I said this FBA thing is building momentum. There's a lot of buyers. And he said to me, mate, just go be the FBA broker. No one's doing it. Go do it. And I thought the market wasn't big enough, but I'm happy I really took his advice.
Yeah, it's very good advice. It's funny, you know. I've found the same thing in business in Australia. It's almost counterintuitive, because when you're starting a business, you think, oh no, I've got to be there for everyone just in case I miss out, and I've got to pay the bills. But the funny thing is, the deeper and narrower you get, the better off you are, because you're coming back to that unique point of difference that you spoke about before. You're going to attract that tribe, and as long as you're clear on what that tribe is, then you're giving your business a much better chance. So that is very smart advice, no question about it. Now, that's awesome. Final question then, mate. If you were to speak to a school leaver, what would you advise them to invest their time, money and skills in to create freedom?
A school leader?
A school leaver. So someone's about to leave school and they've come to you.
Oh, school leaver.
Yeah,
sorry.
Yes. Sorry, mate. They're just leaving school and they've said, Coran, I don't know what I should do with my life, but I want to be financially free. What should I do? Where should I invest my time, money and skills to make that happen?
Absolutely. So from my core, I believe sales skills are the hands down the best skill to have, regardless of business that you go into or investments you do. You need to know how to sell, because if it's your business, no one else will be able to sell the business as well as you can. So I would learn to sell. I would go do a commission only sales job. Everyone hates these. I cut my teeth doing commission-only door-to-door sales, and it was the hardest and best thing I ever did. So definitely go do some sales, learn how to sell. Then you'll be able to create your own destiny, really, truly.
Yeah,
if you can knock on a door, pick up a phone, and make a deal happen, get income coming in, you have no limit on what you can do.
Spot on. Brilliant. That's awesome. All right, mate. What's next new and exciting for Coran Woodmass and FBA Broker?
Sure. Well, we're actually building a new brand. So I'm working on becoming the leading middle market advisor for product brands looking to go to market, specifically dealing with founders. So that's a project I'm working on. So it'll be an extension of the FBA Broker. But it's something I'm super passionate about, is working on these larger deals and really changing the lives of our clients, figuring out how to get their business in a place where it can be sellable, and getting a great exit for them. This is literally it's my calling. So I love that, and I'll keep doing that.
Yeah, awesome. And it's the old story. You're niching upon a niche, because and what you're also doing is narrowing the exercise so that it's the old high margin, low volume routine where you're getting a much bigger bang for your own buck, but having a lot more fun because you're dealing with better and greater people on getting a fantastic result. So it makes perfect sense to me. All right, love your work, mate. Look, that has been absolutely awesome. You've been very generous with your time and very open about the realities of what e-commerce business, particularly with an Amazon backup, has been. That's been very informative to me and those that would have an interest in that area, so very appreciative of it. If people want to contact you to talk more, and I think you occupy some very rarefied air in that, because you're looking at businesses across the board as a go-to person initially to understand what they should be doing, so they can then come back to you at the point they decide to either buy or sell. I think you're extremely well positioned. So how should they be doing that, mate?
Sure. So if you're interested in this space, buying, selling, what have you, go to FBAbusinesspriceguide.com and you can get our latest report. So I mentioned earlier we've been tracking and reporting all the public sales in this space for over 2 years. So you can get that report, no opt-in required. And if you want to see what's happening on a weekly basis, there's so many deals in this space. We now do a Market Watch Monday email. And the best thing, whether you're a seller or a buyer, is at the end of each of those emails. So on that same page, you can opt in for this. You just say yes to Market Watch Monday emails. We'll send you an email each Monday. At the bottom of that email, we literally link to every new listing we find each week. So back when I was investing in online assets, I would have loved a resource like this where someone just compiled everything that's available and gave it to me. And we also comment on what sold the past week for what multiple and what the new listings are and what multiples. So we've been tracking and reporting on this for years. So jump on that list. It's free. You can just opt in. You can opt out whenever you want, but it's a great way to see what's happening in the space. And you can reply to any one of those emails. Me or one of the team will get back to you with help. We often refer buyers. So I said before, our minimum list price is $1 million US now and above. So if someone's looking to invest less than that, jumping on this list is the best way to find what deals are out there and see what's happening in the market.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant, mate. Well, look, again, love the work you're doing. You've been very, very generous with the time and the information. It's going to be very useful to a lot of us. So keep up the great work, mate, and keep globetrotting. And I'm sure at some stage, mate, I'll bump into you in the traps. I'm not sure it'll be a bar in Barcelona, but we like to travel as well, mate. So I'll make sure that I shout you a beer when we actually the universes collide. And keep doing what you're doing, mate. It's awesome work.
Yeah, thanks, Bushy. This has been fun.
Thanks, Coran. Appreciate your time, mate. Talk soon. Bye. Well, freedom fighters, how good was that? To get a summary of all this investment gold in the show notes, just email me on hello@khgroup.com.au. That's HELLO@khgroup.com.au. Or check us out at www.bushymartin.com.au/get invested. I look forward to joining you next week for another episode of the Get Invested podcast. So thanks for listening, and as always, dream as if you live forever and live as if you'll die